All right, it's time to talk about potential 49ers trades and just in general replacements for Nick Bosa, who you could see here before he tore his ACL, was playing a good game against the Cardinals, was having a hell of a season. But the guy standing right next to Nick Bosa there is playing at an elite level through 3 games in Bryce Huff. And I have this big 49ers article with grades up right now that really delves into it. We're going to talk about it over the course of this video. We're also going to talk about somebody named Trey Hendrickson. You can see here, great Bengals pass rusher who was not able to find a long-term contract with Cincinnati after a standoff this offseason. Instead, they gave him a pay raise for this 2025 season, and it's up in the air after 2025. And Trey is 30 years old. So this is not a situation where the Bengals are, I think, going to fork over the cash to pay a 25-year-old edge rusher for 5 or 6 years. I think that this is one where there is a true standoff because Hendrickson has led the league in sacks for 2 straight years, but is on the older end of the spectrum. If you actually do want to call a team cheap, well, Cincinnati, I get that they've spent on the offensive side of the ball, but they don't seem interested in spending big money on defense. And you could see this impasse lasting through the end of his contract. It's not like he's under a deal for 2026. So I know that it's very rare for the Bengals to trade, but there's a reason why Tim Kawakami at the Standard wrote about a potential Trey Hendrickson trade in this situation for the 49ers, because it's actually one that could make financial sense if the Bengals are willing to move him. And you know that Joe Burrow has to have surgery on his toe. Could be out, 3+ months? Could be a lost season in Cincinnati. Could actually be a smart business play if they're not going to re-sign Trey Hendrickson anyway to make a move. Now, I would say right now the 49ers are in a holding pattern, and they should be in a holding pattern because, again, this guy right here, Bryce Huff, has been playing so well. Sam Okawanu is going to be the short-term option to pick up slack snap count-wise for the 49ers. Okawanu went up to 42 snaps on Sunday, and I actually thought that he played well against Kyler Murray and the Cardinals. He had started the season in only 15 snaps against the Seattle Seahawks. The 49ers aren't going to make a splashy move 2 days after Nick Bosa's ACL injury. They can bide their time. They should bide their time. They're 3-0 right now. They need to find something that works for them in the long term, and the only way that you can properly execute that is if you gauge what you actually need. Right now, I can tell you that the 49ers are extra relieved that they not only traded for Bryce Huff, but also that the Eagles are picking up the majority of his salary. Take a look at the 5 highest graded edge rushers in the NFL this season. Bryce Huff through 3 games is on that list. And yeah, I had to take a little shot there at the Philadelphia content creators who were so sure that they were fleecing the 49ers this offseason. Well, when you're paying over 50% of a guy's salary and he's graded top 5 at one of the most important positions in football, I'm not really sure if you fleeced San Francisco. But Huff has been really, really good in all facets of the game. He's been elite rushing the passer. We've shown several graphics of how close to opposing quarterbacks he's getting. It's collapsing the pocket in the way that the 49ers need him to. But he's also ranked number 22 of 66 qualifying edge defenders against the run. And so by that, I mean, he can be a 3-down player. Robert Saleh's utilizing him correctly. Now, we thought the correct utilization of Bryce Huff would be merely as a pass rushing edge, somebody that's playing about a third of the snaps. But it turns out that this is something that maybe he just didn't have the right alignments and the right belief and the right situation in Philadelphia to also deliver on first and second downs. We're going to find out, because right now the 49ers are obviously shorthanded at that edge rushing position without Bosa, who's an all-everything player, the NFL leader in pressures since he joined the league in 2019. Huff naturally is going to be asked to pick up some of the slack, and we'll see how he does in that expanded role. because you can't really expand Mykel Williams' role all too much more. He was already playing over 40 snaps a game, already leading the 49ers defensive line in snaps. So you're going to ask Huff to increase his workload. You're going to ask Sam Okawanu to increase his workload, and then you're going to gauge how things go over at least the next week. Soon you'll move into October. The trade deadline is on November 5th, and that's when the 49ers, before then, that's when they could make a move to try to buoy the edge rusher position. I think that if they win on Sunday, and they're favored by about a field goal against Jacksonville, they will be 4-0, and if it's, I think there will be a need because Nick Bosa, again, is an irreplaceable player. So it's going to leave a void. And we can talk about all the smoke and mirrors that the 49ers can execute on the back end with the defense as a whole. Robert Saleh has already done this successfully once. We can talk about everything the 49ers can do to pick up slack. This still will make them worse. And I think at 4-0, with what they've already overcome, I mean, that's a huge testament to the coaching staff, to the locker room, to the roster renovation. They might and probably should feel indebted to do everything possible to fortify the position, the vacancy that is there as a result of Nick Bosa's ACL injury. Now, Kyle Shanahan talked about it yesterday. It takes two to tango for any potential trade. But the reason that I put the two names that I did on the title here in Trey Hendrickson and Kayvon Thibodeaux, the younger edge rusher of the New York Giants, is that those are two names that could potentially evolve into making sense over the course of October. Through 3 weeks, it is too soon to expect a team to wave the white flag and want to trade somebody. But the Giants are 0-3. And the Bengals, even though they're 2-1, they have lost Burrow, and stuff can go downhill for them over the course of the next few weeks. And the deadline is where the deadline's at, because by that point, by November 5th, you should have reached an inflection point to make a decision whether to buy or to sell. So this is going to heat up over the course of the next few weeks. We're going to keep an eye on how some of these teams are performing. And just two of the initial names that I wanted to toss out there are Hendrickson and Kayvon Thibodeaux. Now, Hendrickson is 30, and Tim, you should definitely check out this article up on the San Francisco Standard. Tim has a trade proposal that he made that includes several conditional factors for Trey Hendrickson. I want you guys to let me know what you think of this. He says the 49ers can offer a first and a third round pick in 2026 and a second rounder in 2027, but they only pay that much if Hendrickson plays 60% of more of the 49ers remaining defensive snaps, and the 49ers get to the playoffs, and he re-signs with the 49ers. Now, I mean, this is where it gets really complicated, and I could talk about the salary cap situation. The 49ers obviously have a lot of near-term space, but they've intentionally pushed cap hits back into the future. They have Bosa still under contract for several more seasons. It's a situation where if they did trade for somebody at edge and then re-sign them, they would have them on top of the contractual rights to Nick Bosa. And it's way too early to even project how Nick Bosa is going to recover from the second ACL surgery on the knee that is hurt, because he also hurt that one back in high school. So I think that the 49ers, it just hurts my head to think about potential machinations financially at the edge rusher position before they've even made a move. But Tim is accounting for that with one of the conditions of his Trey Hendrickson trade. He then goes on to say that if Hendrickson plays 60+% of snaps and the 49ers get to the playoffs, but Hendrickson doesn't re-sign, the price in a potential trade would lower to just a first rounder. So you toss out the third round pick and you toss out the 2027 second if he doesn't re-sign. So a first round pick for a rental of Trey Hendrickson for the rest of this season. Tim believes that the 49ers would owe this to the locker room, especially if they started 4-0, potentially 5-0 if they can beat the Rams in a couple weeks. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We can talk about Jacksonville on Sunday, and we can talk about how this might evolve into October as the trade deadline starts to grow closer. Obviously, that would be a high cost. Like anytime you send away a first round pick, it's a high cost. However, what I would add to Tim's thinking here is that if the 49ers are indeed really good this year, and I think that there are indications that it could be a special team this year, that first round pick that you give up is probably going to be outside of slam dunk elite offensive tackle territory. The first round pick could be in the high 20s if you continue winning. So you're not giving up the same type of value as you'd be giving up if you were a bad team. And if you were picking in the top 10 or the top 5, which is typically where the offensive tackles of the 49ers physical caliber go in the NFL draft. All right, Tim continues and he says that there's a third contingency for Hendrickson. Would be lowered again to just a third rounder if Hendrickson doesn't play 60% of the snaps or the 49ers fail to make the playoffs and Hendrickson doesn't re-sign. So it would be a conditional trade, and you could read all of this up on the San Francisco Standard. It was a good hypothetical situation to read about regarding Hendrickson, a conditional trade that would offer 3 picks over 2 drafts if the 49ers get the full Monty with Trey Hendrickson. If they bring him in, he plays a lot, they make it to the playoffs, and he re-signs. And it goes down to just the first round pick if he plays a lot and they make the playoffs, but he doesn't re-sign, and it diminishes to a second round pick, just a rental for a year if things don't work out. I don't know if the Bengals would even go for that third contingency. It seems that that's very, very protective of the 49ers. And consider the fact that Mike Brown rarely trades players. That doesn't seem like he enjoys the optics of that, but business is business. And if things slide downhill for Cincinnati, then I think you could make the business argument, like the economic argument, that trading Trey Hendrickson would be a good idea, especially since they couldn't come to a deal this year. From a 49ers financial perspective, Hendrickson would be a $16 million base salary this year, but that includes the 3 games that he's already played for Cincinnati. So the cost for San Francisco would be reduced since he's already gotten those 3 paychecks. The 49ers have $40 million or so in short-term salary cap space. They are trying to stay salary cap sustainable for the long term. So what you saw San Francisco do this offseason, they're definitely not cheap. They're the opposite of cheap. They're spending the second or third most money in the entire NFL cash payments this offseason. They cleared the deck of a lot of underperforming mid-tier contracts this offseason. Leonard Floyd, Malik Collins, guys who weren't playing well enough against the run. And they doubled down their investments into their A-list players, Brock Purdy being the most notable one, Fred Warner, George Kittle, all those guys received new contracts. So the spending stayed really high for the 49ers this offseason, but they were able to generate much more financial efficiency with their reliance on bargain bin contracts and draft picks, who are also bargains, especially if they play well like they have for the 49ers. Throughout the meat of the roster. You got the foundational pillars and you have the meat of the roster. In executing a lot of their contractual business, the 49ers pushed salary cap hits into the future through prorations. So they have some of the most salary cap space in football for 2025. Now, because unused salary cap space carries over from season to season, they're going to need that carryover room, a lot of it at least, to move into 2026 and beyond so they can handle some of these escalating costs. They do all of this by design. So you can't just look at 40 million of salary cap space and say, hey, the 49ers could go trade for anybody or sign for anybody. That's not technically true, especially since their goal is to stay sustainable moving into the future. They've been smart about this throughout the years. They're going to remain trying to be smart about this. It's always hard to predict certain things, and you can't even know exactly where the cap is going to be next year because that's all tied to NFL revenue. But so far, the 49ers have done a good job surfing the wave of the rising salary cap. There, however, is a certain amount of spending increase that the 49ers can absorb while remaining salary cap sustainable in the future. Now, is it 5 million? Is it 10 million? Is it, Hendrickson's full salary? If they trade for him in October, then it's going to cost just over probably 10 million for the rest of the season. $16 million base salary, but the Bengals will have already paid for about 5 to 6 million of it. He becomes cheaper financially by the week, right? And we don't know, and the 49ers have an idea, but they have to make this calculation, this risk reward in their head. We don't know exactly where the threshold lies. How much would the 49ers be willing to continue to spend? And they also have to assign monetary value to draft picks. And obviously the Bengals would have to want to trade somebody like Trey Hendrickson, or the Giants would want to have to trade somebody like Kayvon Thibodeaux for anything like this to come to fruition. But we have to identify the exact price point that is possible for the 49ers to remain sustainable in the long term. Here's a piece of good news that nobody else is reporting for the 49ers as far as their flexibility moving forward. They take out insurance policies on every single large contract they give out against the salary cap. That includes the deal that they agreed to with Nick Bosa in 2023, the long-term contract that Bosa is currently on. So this salary cap insurance, it doesn't cover all of Nick Bosa's cap hit, but it will rebate the 49ers a few $1 million. And I'll get the exact amount for you over the course of the next few weeks. But the 49ers will get a few $1 million against the salary cap back as a credit for this 2025 season that will roll over into 2026. That should increase their spending threshold for a potential edge rusher if they decide to go that route. So you got to keep in mind the financial situation, and you have to keep in mind the draft pick situation, and those two tie together because the 49ers are building their roster in a cost-efficient way, and it's hard to argue with how good the offseason renovations were based on the results so far this year. They're 3-0, but both of those tie together because there's monetary value in draft picks. Now, somebody like Trey Hendrickson, 17.5 sacks, led the NFL last season. Do I think that he would be as good as Nick Bosa? No, he's older than Bosa. I don't think that he's quite as well-rounded of a player as Bosa, but he can get after the quarterback. He undoubtedly is an elite player. I think that the way that Bryce Huff is playing right now is remarkable, but we have to take into account the fact that Bryce Huff is doing this. This was his second straight game, just absolutely dominating in the quarterback distance metric. He's doing this with Nick Bosa on the other side. Now, he was awesome for San Francisco even after Bosa exited the other day. So that gives the 49ers some hope that Huff can continue this alongside Mykel Williams, who had 6 pressures to lead the way on Sunday. But we can't just automatically right now disassociate the fact that they traded for Bryce Huff thinking he'd be a complementary piece, not a featured piece, and that the majority of the damage that Huff has done so far has come as a complementary piece. Maybe Bryce Huff is able to prove himself as a 3-down guy and take that next step to huge money in the NFL. I mean, the 49ers would have to think about re-signing him if he's able to sustain this level of play without Bosa in a more utilized snap roll over the course of the season. Maybe that happens. That would be the best news ever for the 49ers. But I don't think that right now you can count on it. And I think that's, part of the reason why the 49ers need to give this at least a couple weeks to figure out exactly what they have with the guys who are healthy. Like you have to sit back, calm down, go into fact-finding mode. You're scrambling right now because one of your defensive pillars got hurt. And, I think none of people are talking about the human impact of this. And I'm just going to pause for a second and say nobody works harder than Nick Bosa. And nobody has really been through more injury-wise than Nick Bosa. I mean, he tore an ACL in high school. He tore – my phone is now playing right now. I got to pause that. Hear my own voice through my phone. He went through injury – ACL hell in high school, had a rehab the same knee that he just hurt the other day. He went through this in 2020, week 2 against the Jets. I mean, when it comes to diet, preparation, just round the clock workout regimen, I put Bosa up there with Christian McCaffrey. I mean, both of these guys are absolute warriors who have dedicated their lives to the game of football. And whenever you see an injury like this, the first thing I think of is not about the team and how they could pick up the slack for this. I think about the person. I think about Bosa and what he's going to have to go through here over the next year. And spare me that he's making all this money. This is a work of passion for these guys, and going through the strain that they do with, I mean, it is a round the clock commitment, going through the strain that they do to have to add another year of rehab, another lost season on the field, especially given how well he had prepared himself for 2025. I mean, he would have had a shot at Defensive Player of the Year this year. That's a brutal blow. And I think you have to think about it from the human aspect to begin. But then you zoom out and you look at the team-wide aspect. And, the 49ers are doing stuff that I don't think that they're getting enough credit for how impressive this start has been. This right here is the DVOA offense-defense graph of performance through 2 weeks. You want to be in the upper right. The 49ers are missing over 5 really good starters. Like, nobody else is missing that much on either side of the football. And the 49ers are in one of the most coveted balanced spots of this entire graph, upper right corner. I think that you can make the very fair argument that if any of the teams in the upper right, outside of the 49ers, were dealing with the injury losses that San Francisco is dealing with, they would not be in the upper right of this graph. Offense is x-axis, defense is y-axis. By the way, 49ers play Jacksonville on Sunday. It's going to be a good game. 2 teams in the upper right. But the 49ers level of injury resilience so far has been maybe the most impressive story in the NFL through 3 games this season. And the Seahawks are number 1 in overall DVOA because this doesn't include special teams, this graph. And the 49ers went on the road. Not only did they beat the Seattle Seahawks, but the 49ers, I think, when you just consider offense and defense, if you take special teams out of the equation, they whipped the Seahawks. Like, the 49ers lost 11 expected points on special teams in week 1. I'm just giving you guys the factual math here. They won that game by 4. So if they lost 11 expected points on special teams, had they just played that to a draw on special teams and they replaced the kicker, Jake Moody, with Eddie Pinheiro after that game, but just a draw on special teams, 49ers win that game by 2 touchdowns. On the road against the number 1 DVOA team in football, with a QB playing through a toe injury, a turf toe injury. Brock Purdy injured that in the first half without a lot of these weapons. Now, of course, the injury count has grown since that game against Seattle, but they were still significantly shorthanded there in week 1 with somebody like Brandon Ayuk out, Malik Mustafa also on PUP. You have to really marvel at where the 49ers are right now. And I think that if this continues, and they should be getting Brock Purdy back this week, where we're going to know a little bit more about that tomorrow. But if this continues against the good Jacksonville team to set up the showdown with the Rams, win or lose that game against the Rams in week 5, I think the 49ers are very, very quickly establishing themselves as bona fide contenders. The schedule might be a little bit harder than people initially anticipated, because a team like the Colts is performing much better than outside expectations. But there really is substance to the thought that the 49ers would owe a push of some chips into the middle of the table out of respect, not only to the locker room, but to the coaching staff and to the work that they as a front office have done. I mean, again, look where they are. No other team would be where the 49ers are. I think it's really safe to say that, given the 49ers level of injury decimation. That speaks to what Kyle Shanahan has done. That speaks to what Robert Saleh has been able to do. That speaks to the roster renovation that the front office itself has executed over the course of the past several months. They got better at the margins. They got more cost efficient at the margins. They got younger. They got faster at those margins. They got healthier at the margins too. It's the star players right now who are going through the most injury problems. But the 49ers found a way to turn the struggles of 2024 into success in 2025. I mean, the biggest stat there is they were 0-2 with a backup QB last year. They're 2-0 with a backup QB this year. They've done all this work. They've come this long way. They are 3-0. Now they lose Nick Bosa. How do they respond? Well, I think that they've been able to set themselves up financially for a potential investment that does allow them to respond in a positive way. But there's still a lot to be determined moving forward. You know, one stat right here that's really good. Let's get this one up on the screen. I absolutely love this one. This is 2025 pass rush win rate through 3 games. Look who's on this top 10 list. That's Bryce Huff, 24.6%. Look who's right above Bryce Huff. Trey Hendrickson at 24.7%. Isn't that fitting when you see these two guys right here, Trey Hendrickson and Bryce Huff on the list right ahead of Danielle Hunter. Jared Verse of the Rams is on there. The 49ers saw Nick Bonito and Jonathan Cooper in the preseason when they had that joint practice with the Denver Broncos. Not surprising to see Parsons, Myles Garrett, and Will Anderson Jr. up at the top of this list as well. But a lot of interesting moving pieces for sure. When you talk about Hendrickson, you know, this is somebody who's consistently at this spot for the Bengals. I don't think that he's quite the run defender. I mean, Nick Bosa's elite in all facets of the game. And it's funny because I don't think that Bosa by some is as appreciated as he should be until he tears his ACL. And they say that the 49ers can't possibly survive at all without him. It's funny. It's like, pick a side. Don't tell me that Nick Bosa is overrated and then say that the 49ers are completely cooked without him. But Bosa's led the league in pressures since he joined in 2019. And he last year was the only 49ers plus run defender on the defensive line. What San Francisco has done this offseason so successfully is they've restocked the line with guys who are good against the run. And they're playing high-level run defense now. I mean, Michael Williams is getting better and better every week. Alfred Collins is getting better every week. Somebody like Bryce Huff is playing the best run defense of his career. Yetur Gross-Matos, huge in that regard. Sam Okawanu playing good football for the 49ers up front. They have been able to regain the trajectory that Robert Saleh initially put them on back when he was the defensive coordinator the first time. The 49ers had lost that trajectory over the course of the past 2 seasons under Steve Wilks and Nick Sorensen, all the way down to the number 29 run defense in football. Now things are picking up in the direction that they have to go. If you're not going to stop the run, you're not going to have any fun. And, when Saleh first got this done in 2020 after Nick Bosa went down, that's another thing. Like, Robert Saleh has succeeded as a defensive coordinator for the 49ers without Nick Bosa by doing a lot of creative stuff on the back end and finding a way for Kerry Hyder to have a path to 8.5 sacks in 2020. But the core tenet of the 49ers' success, even without superstars defensively, has been, well, if you could stop the run, then you set yourself up for anything to be possible. Because if you could stop the run, then you're not going to be facing the 2nd and 4s and the 3rd and 2s, which kill you, especially if you don't have a really good pass rush. You're seeing 2nd and 8 for opposing offenses, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 5 is a little bit more manageable for a defense. And then you could let the talent that you brought in, like the younger talent that you brought in, the speed and power combination that they see from guys like Marquise Siegel and Upton Stout, you let those guys fly around and make plays. I mean, the 49ers, and I wrote this, I have the grade piece is out for this game, by the way. You've already seen this, but we're going to go further into this. The grade piece for the Cardinals game takes note of the fact that the 49ers now have 3 sub-packages in the nickel spot of that defense. They have the standard base, with Luke Gifford. So that's your rundown base linebacker. He was back up to 12 snaps after he didn't play on defense against the Saints. You've got your standard nickel, your small nickel in Upton Stout, saved the game with 34 snaps, and the last one was the biggest one where he knocked the ball away from Zay Jones. And now you've got a big nickel that saw a huge increase in usage in Jair Brown, 25 snaps after only 7 in the first week. That's all the same spot on the roster, right? Like you look at the 11 who are out there on defense, and it's either going to be Luke Gifford in base, Jair Brown in big nickel, or Upton Stout in small nickel. Who knows? Maybe they even add a personnel package this year. They already have 3. That's more than usual. Most NFL teams only have 2 personnel packages for that one spot. Maybe they add one that features Nick Martin, the rookie linebacker out of Oklahoma State, by the end of this season. I wouldn't put it past Robert Saleh. This is what I talk about when we need to illustrate the need to creatively pick up the slack that Nick Bosa has left behind with this injury. You're not going to be able to do it in a completely straightforward way, even if you trade for somebody like Trey Hendrickson, because Bosa is, I would say, he's a singular talent in many ways, especially with the fit for the wide 9 and the 49er system. You're going, and it's unlikely to trade for a huge name, as I think can be established just by common sense. So regardless of who the front office is able to add over the course of the next 6 weeks, there will have to be greater weight pulled by the schematic diversions of the coaching staff. And they're already running 3 personnel packages on the back end. We already know what Robert Saleh did in 2020. Just excellent work in the back 7 to open things up for the front 4 without Nick Bosa. And we know that there might be more in the pipe. And, it was Joseph Dana. He's a good Twitter follower of mine. Went in today and he said, how about Nick Martin? We saw him blitzing a lot in the preseason. Saw him develop as a blitz in the preseason. He's been inactive, but we know that he's got a future with the 49ers. Might they bring him in some crazy sub-package situations as he continues to develop on the practice squad and he's another really strong guy, 26 bench press reps, a lot of speed, sub 4.5 speed. Will they let him maybe rush off the edge at some point? And, that's probably less likely, but it got my head spinning because I'm already seeing what they're doing with Jair Brown. I'm already seeing what they're doing with Luke Gifford. I'm already seeing all the blitzing they're doing with Upton Stout. Robert Saleh is being paid the big bucks to solve Rubik's Cubes like the one that is confronting the 49ers right now. They're also right now, the 49ers getting more and more from Mykel Williams on a game-by-game basis. His pressure rate by week 1, he didn't have a single pressure. It was strictly a run stopper in week 1. Did a good job, but he didn't have a single pressure. Week 2, Mykel Williams' pressure rate has gone up to 3.4%. This past week against the Cardinals, it surged from 3.4% to 13.8%. So Mykel Williams is growing more and more comfortable right in front of our eyes. His win percentage as a pass rusher went from 0% week 1, 10% in week 2, 20.7% in week 3. Those are significant numbers. That thanks to Kyle Posey for those numbers on Twitter. So Williams is getting better. Huff has been awesome throughout this season. Williams had 6 pressures for the 49ers the other day. Okawanu up to 42 snaps. He began this season with 15 in Seattle. The 49ers will probably make at least a short-term move this week. It'll either be a promotion from their own practice squad. They've got Trevis Gibson, the veteran, and Robert Beal Jr., the younger edge rusher, on that practice squad. And they could scour other practice squads. They can host players for workouts today. We'll keep an eye on that. But then as September turns to October, especially if this team is 4-0 heading into next week, who knows where they'll be after they play the Rams on Thursday. But what they've done so far has been very, very impressive. As this moves forward, the 49ers can start to identify the potential opportunities across the league. Trey Hendrickson, as Tim wrote, might be one of them. Kayvon Thibodeaux, who's still only 24 years old, might be another one of them with the Giants languishing at 0-3. The Giants just made a change today to Jackson Dart at the quarterback position. Not going to be Russell Wilson anymore. And the 49ers, once they know exactly what they have to do efficiency-wise to figure things out, then they'll take that step if it is indeed available. You know, in 2020, the 49ers were able to maintain the number 6 defense by DVOA in football. And that year, you know, people use it as this example of what Robert Saleh was able to do without Nick Bosa. And it's very, very true. But I still would like to caution everyone that when they were number 2 in 2019 versus when they dropped down to whatever it was, number 6, I think in EPA, it might have been number 7 or number 8 in 2020. Even though that's only a 4 or 5 spot drop in the rankings, it is a little bit more significant than that in terms of the actual expected point production per game. When you're the number 2 defense in the NFL, like the 49ers were in 2019 with Bosa, and I'm not saying that's where they would be this year. This is still, there's just so much moldable clay and there's so much variability in this defense because of the youth that it's a little tricky to compare with those years. But they were a team that was good for about 11 expected points on defense per game in 2019. That dropped to about 2 expected points per game on defense in 2020. So they might have ranked in the top 10, you know, top 7, top wherever it was in 2020, even without Bosa. But the injury toll, and it wasn't just Bosa, but the injury toll primarily spearheaded by Bosa and his absence in 2020 cost the 49ers about 9 points a game, expected points a game, which translates to points a game. So they still lost quite a bit defensively, which leads me to my main point, and that is you can't just make up for a loss like this with the defensive line. You know, unless you are able to land somebody like Hendrickson and you make a bunch of machinations on the back end and you pick up the rest of the slack that way. Yeah, sure. That's a pipe dream scenario. I don't think it's likely. And again, even if something like that happens, Bosa, there's a reason why you made Bosa the highest paid non-quarterback in the league back when you signed him in 2023. But in a realistic world, you pick up some of the slack defensively, but the locomotive that pulls the train has to be the offense. Like yesterday, I looked through this and I showed up on Twitter, I showed some of these stats. Over the past 7 Super Bowl winners, 3 have not had a top 10 defense. So offense has driven the train for those teams. The only Super Bowl winner of the past 7 with an offense outside of the top 8 was last year's winner, the Philadelphia Eagles. Their offense was ranked number 13 in DVOA. And even they, I would say the offense turned it on down the stretch of the regular season or into the playoffs. I mean, Saquon Barkley went crazy in the playoffs. The point is that this is an offense-driven league, and it's possible to win a Super Bowl if your defense is not elite, as long as your offense is. And throughout this entire journey, before Bosa got hurt, my main point was this is ultimately going to come down to how Brock Purdy and the offense fares once the weapons are generally back. And the 49ers have to knock on wood and hope that the weapons are all together at some point this season, especially in the very important months of the season. We're talking McCaffrey, Kittle, Pearsall, Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings, Demarcus Robinson. Get all those guys on the field at the same time. Can this offense be a top 3 offense in the league? I think yes. Just based, I think I've seen proof of that in the past. They were the number 1 offense in the league in 2023 when they had all their weapons on the field. So I think that San Francisco is actually well positioned to be an elite offense if they can get some injury luck on that side of the ball. I realize that might be too much to ask, but that's the formula in the large picture that can get the 49ers to where they want to be. Top 5, top 3 offense, at least top 5, and a defense that stays in the top half of the league, and you get there through any means necessary. Maybe it's through Trey Hendrickson. Maybe it's Kayvon Thibodeaux. Maybe you swing a trade with the Tennessee Titans for Arden Key, an old friend. Maybe you're able to scrap somebody off of a practice squad somewhere that combines with Bryce Huff and Sam Okawanu to generate some efficiency, and then you find the rest of the slack in the back seven with multiple personnel packages that even include Nick Martin. I don't know. That's what makes this so beautiful to watch. Robert Saleh knows what he's doing when it comes to trying to make up lost time, to try to make up some of the efficiency that's there. I find it fascinating. I thought what they ran in 2020 when Kerry Hyder had those 8.5 sacks, that was the final line and the punchline on Robert Saleh's resume that got him hired as a head coach by the New York Jets the next year. And he's going to have a chance to do something similar this year, although with more variability because the defense is younger and not everything is settled. I mean, consider where we were about 2.5 weeks ago. I was predicting entering the week 1 game against the Seattle Seahawks that the 49ers would probably struggle defensively at the start of this year. They're, by DVOA, they're a top 5 defense through 3 weeks. So they've outperformed that prediction significantly with their youth. They're far from a perfect unit, but because they have shown a higher floor with their youth than was anticipated at the start of the season, it makes this Bosa replacement project more manageable and I think more interesting than it would have been. If this were a bad defense to start the year, or just a defense that was still growing but wasn't even in the top half of the league, as I thought would be possible. And I think the 49ers feared that too. You don't know until the guys actually play. If the 49ers were dealing with like the number 18 or number 19 defense right now, and they lost Bosa, alarm bells everywhere. You would almost have to make a trade very, very soon, even if it's probably not possible only 3 weeks into the season, because this would sink the defense down to 2024 levels. But the fact that they're number 5, not number 18 or number 19, there is plausible reason to believe that the 49ers can stay in the top 16, top half defense. And again, 3 Super Bowl winners of the past 7 years have done it with defenses ranked between 12 and 14. Their offenses have been in the top 3. If you don't believe the 49ers can be a top 3 offense, I think you're probably wrong, because they have already demonstrated that with Brock Purdy at the helm. But if you don't believe that, then yeah, their hopes are completely out the window. But the elite offense plus manageable defense path is one that has been taken to Super Bowl success in recent NFL history. So I have the grades, and I know that we haven't covered the grades yet, but I could go through some of these grades even after I've talked for 42 minutes. Quickly, though, we're going to hear from our sponsor at Harry's. Harry's, they need to send me some of their razors. I've shaved in a couple days, but Harry's, they do have a good product. They have sent me some before. I just don't currently have one here in San Francisco. It's back in Nashville. Harry's, if you're sick of, going the Walgreens or CVS or whatever and getting razors that you feel ripped off for, like $20 for a pack of 4 refills, you should check out Harry's. They own their own world-class blade factory in Germany. No outsourcing, no middleman. That same facility has been perfecting blade making for over 100 years. Because they control the entire process from steel to shelf, they keep costs low. So why pay $20 for refills when Harry's gives you better blades for a fraction of that? For a limited time, our listeners can get Harry's in a trial set for only $8 and a free gift at harrys.com/Lombardi. Just head over to harrys.com/Lombardi to receive our exclusive discount. After you purchase, they will ask you where you heard of them. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you to Harry's. Go ahead and check it out. All right, I'm going to take the Harry's logo now off the corner of that screen, and I will open this up to the 49ers grades. They go through some of you could see this up on the San Francisco Standard, by the way. You should definitely sign up, because Tim wrote about Trey Hendrickson up on the Standard. I wrote 49ers grades. I wrote about Bosa yesterday. All these articles, like here, Tim's Hendrickson article, very, very involved, very in-depth, as you can see. Yesterday's Bosa article, where we have Robert Saleh defensive efficiency comparisons to other 49ers coordinators. And then, of course, today's grades article, we're going to get deep into the weeds. Quarterback, Mac Jones. Take a look at this. For a backup, you can't really ask for much better performance on a chart like this one than what we see right here from Mac Jones. X-axis is completion percentage. Y-axis is success rate. So this is basically a graph just illustrating consistency, high floor. You want your backup to have a high floor. Some of the most efficient quarterbacks in the league are in the upper right. Daniel Jones is the most efficient quarterback in the league. He's the only one of the EPA higher than Brock Purdy's actually right now. Sam Darnold having a nice start to the season. Jared Goff, saw him win last night against Baltimore. Well, Mac Jones is right up in that upper right quadrant. Like, the completion percentage has been good. The success rate has been well over 50%. Of course he forced a football into Ricky Pearsall. We all saw that the other day, but let's be realistic. This is your QB2. He's giving you upper half efficiency. Mac Jones gets a good grade for this game. I think I gave him a B for this grade. I gave him a B minus just because I don't think he was quite as good as he was in New Orleans, but he's facing a more experienced front. But a B is good. He's doing what they need to at the backup quarterback position, and Purdy should be back this week. This right here, this is a really good stat from NFL Next Gen Stats on the receiver room, and they get an A. Pearsall caught 8 passes for 117 yards against the Cardinals, all of which came with a defender within 3 yards. He has 267 receiving yards in contested situations, 61 more yards than any other player. This can really open up for Ricky once they start getting guys back, which might be as soon as this week. I mean, Demarcus Robinson for sure. It's going to be huge for the 49ers, but you also have Juwan Jennings on a day-to-day basis. He might be back for San Francisco. I would think that you get both Kittle and maybe, so I'm not going to say both, but you get Kittle week 6 against Tampa Bay and maybe Brandon Ayuk week 6. Ricky Pearsall shouldn't be operating in such close quarters anymore. The run game, especially for San, they're facing so many 5 and 6 man fronts. They need to loosen up opposing boxes, and I think it's smart for opposing defensive coordinators to play the 49ers the way that they've been playing them so far. But it's one of those things where San Francisco can only exit this cycle and start running the football more effectively once they start really punishing teams for playing the box as tightly as possible. And that's not going to happen until the 49ers have a full or closer to a full offensive arsenal. Anyway, receivers, I thought Sky Moore, he played 34 snaps, huge for the 49ers. Even after guys are back, Sky Moore is likely to stay on this team as the punt kick return specialist. So Sky is, it's good to see him involved in the offense, because you could think Ray McLeod, they could keep him around as a gadget weapon on offense once they do have a more fully stocked receiving room. I gave the running backs an A. McCaffrey, that is the first player with at least 50 runs and 25 catches through 3 weeks since Thurman Thomas eclipsed those marks during his 1991 MVP season. Of course, the 49ers want to ease McCaffrey's workload, but right now that it needs to be where it's at so they win games. I mean, one of the key reasons they're 3-0 is because they have been feeding McCaffrey the football. He's been picking up the slack on the offensive side for so many of these injuries. A grade for Jake Tonjes. One thing I noticed on tape is that Jake was a fullback on one snap in this game, and he laid down a nice block. It was one of McCaffrey's best runs of the game. So the adaptability that Jake Tonjes has been able to show has helped the 49ers when Juszczyk went down with concussion. It obviously has helped big time after George Kittle went down for San Francisco against the Seattle Seahawks. Tonjes was the hero in that game, and 45 snaps later, after the win against the Arizona Cardinals, 49ers have to be feeling really, really good about the tight end 3 position, because that's where Jake Tonjes is out for San Francisco. Once Kittle does return in week 6, the 49ers are going to be in a really, really good spot in that tight end room. They get an A. Offensive line for San Francisco, as you can see here, gave him a D. They gave up too much pressure. And Kyle Shanahan said that. I mean, he was very, very clear with his quote on the offensive line. Connor Colby, you got to recognize, though, that Connor Colby played this game hurt. Injured his groin on Thursday. First career start hurt with a groin injury. It sounds brutal. Gave up 5 pressures. The biggest problem was the interior for the 49ers. Colby, Brendel, Dominic Pooney. You saw Calais Campbell beat Dominic Pooney. That was tough for San Francisco. So very unfortunately for the 49ers, the Ben Barch injury, I think, came in the same week as a Connor Colby practice injury. And that interior line right now, everybody's, I think, in this game, when you have one spot that was going through so much trouble at left guard, and I thought Colby fought. Like, I'm not saying that he did a poor job. I think that he did all he could given the situation that he was thrust into against some veteran pass rushers. I mean, we saw Arizona move Josh Sweat, an edge rusher, to work against Colby, and he beat him in the first half. They were picking on Connor Colby. A situation like that hurts the entire interior line. It exposes Brendel and Dominic Pooney to some pass rush targeting as well, because they're more worry about helping the left guard position. 49ers definitely have to be better. And Jacksonville, just as a little primer for this next week, they're ranked as the NFL's number 2 defense through 3 weeks. Their EPA per play is behind only Minnesota. So I think quarterback mobility is going to be very, very important in this game against Jacksonville, and probably a good thing that Brock Purdy is likely to return for the 49ers. D for the offense, for the offensive line, mainly because of the 49ers struggles on the interior. Defensive line grades, well, whenever Bryce Huff does something like this, like the 49ers D line stood up in this game, limited the rushing attack for Arizona, limited the Cardinals to 13 points, because 2 of those points came via a safety, right? 13 points, despite the fact that Nick Bosa played only 14 snaps before he tore his ACL. Michael Williams has been a monster. Bryce Huff has been a monster. Kalia Davis had a couple nice plays. Yetur Gross-Matos has been good. Sam Okawanu, 42 quality snaps for the 49ers. Defensive line definitely deserves an A. Linebackers, the Predator, Fred Warner, A. D. Winters. One of the biggest underrated plays of the game, after Mac Jones threw his interception, 5 minutes to go or however much, the very next play, D. Winters laid the wood with a massive hit. Nobody's talking about that play, but they were losing vibes after the pick. The fact that D came in there and delivered a big hit, I thought that changed the energy flow of this game. And he's done a lot of that, a lot of big hits so far this year. D has been really, really impressive. Give the safeties an A-. That includes Jair Brown and his 25 snaps at the big nickel spot. Big because the Cardinals run a lot of 3 tight end. They needed Jair to be in there to defend those tight ends. And I gave the corners a B for the 49ers because Renardo's gotten beaten a couple times. It's still a little bit of an issue with Renardo Green. Diamado Lenore missed a tackle on James Conner there in the first half that gave up a first down. I think the corners still need to be a little cleaner for the 49ers. We do know that Upton Stout, though, saved the game with his pass breakup. And then finally, we finished with the 49ers special teams grade. The last 2 games, they might be turning a new leaf. The last 2 games, the 49ers have generated 2 positive expected points on special teams, and that was the difference, quite literally, in this past game. Well, if you look at one of the main triggers of this improvement, Eddie Pinheiro, he is now past Harrison Butker, who must have missed the other day for the Chiefs, to rank number 3 on the all-time field goal accuracy list. Pinheiro's at 88.6%, Butker down to 88.2%. Pinheiro is not far from Justin Tucker on the all-time field goal accuracy list. If Pinheiro keeps on making, he's going to creep closer and closer to Justin Tucker at 89.1%. Now, Cameron Dicker is well ahead of everybody, but he has many, many fewer attempts. So that's just something to watch. But Eddie Pinheiro, Dicker just became eligible for that list with his 100th attempt the other week. Anyway, that is that. 49ers, trade possibilities. Hopefully I explained the financial situation and the dynamic really well. Tim wrote that nice article on Trey Hendrickson. Maybe a conditional trade is something that does happen over the course of the next month. Why don't you check out the great article, not the great article. It is a great article, but the grade article on Hendrickson. Why don't you check out the grade article that I wrote as well, and you can go and see how I rank the 49ers with all that data Should be a lot of fun for you to read. This is why you should be subscribed to the San Francisco Standard. Everybody, thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button to the channel too. We'll be back very soon.